Section 5.8, Solving Quadratic Equations by the Square Root Property. So far we've already learned how to solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula and factoring. This is just a third method or third tool to add to our toolbox on how to solve these. So first off, the square root property says that if two values are equal to each other, then the roots of those also have to be equal. So what it's saying is if we know that a squared is the same as b, then if we take the square root of both of those, that has to be the same. Couple comments before we get started. It's very useful if you already have something that's being squared by itself. Don't forget the plus or minus when you take the square root of both sides. So when we use this property here, we can take the square root of both sides. So we'll have x equals, and then once again, don't forget that plus or minus. Square root of 49 is 7. And that's it. That's why the square root property, if you can remember and use it correctly, it's going to be a lot faster. Once again, notice we have two answers. We have a positive 7 and a negative 7. And that's because even when we are factoring and using the quadratic formula, we got two answers for those. So this is the same thing. We're still solving a quadratic equation. We should still be getting two answers. So in the next case, notice we have something squared by itself, so we can take the square root. Square root of 36 is 6. Don't forget that plus or minus. And now same thing, we just got it that we've been doing since chapter 2, get that x by itself, so we can add 4 to both sides. And here's where some people mess up. I would recommend writing it like this first and then doing your two answers. So we know that x is either 4 plus 6 or it's 4 minus 6. So we get 10 or negative 2. So notice this one, we've got the squared by itself, so let's take our square root. Don't forget that plus or minus. Square root of 100 plus or minus 10. And I tend to write the number that I add or subtract over first. It doesn't matter if you do it first or second. I'll actually go through the same equation doing it the other way. And I just write it like this. So then we know and once again, I write everything out before I do the calculations. 8 plus 10 is 18. 18 divided by 2 is 9. 8 minus 10 is negative 2. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Now I'm going to come back to this step and write it instead as 2x equals plus or minus 10 plus 8 and go this route just to show you that it's the same thing. So notice you get the same thing either way, so it doesn't matter on this step whether you do the 8 first or the 8 second. Alright, coming on to this next one, we can take the square root of both sides. Don't forget that plus or minus. And then let's simplify our root. And we can leave it like this. Take our square root of both sides. After we add 9 to both sides, we get this. If you wanted to write your answer like that, that is also fine. Typically, we write it like this, but I'll accept either way. They're the same number. Square root both sides. Don't forget your plus or minus. And there you go. Now notice in this one, the squared quantity is not by itself. We need to get that by itself in order to use the square root property. So you got to start by moving over this 10. Now take the square root of both sides. Don't forget your plus or minus. There we go. Same thing here, we've got to get this squared quantity by itself first. So we need to add the 5. And then we still have to divide both sides by this 4. Square root of both sides. Don't forget your plus or minus. And there you go.